Next up in our live section, Bill Higley is joining us. Bill is an attorney with Aegis Law. He concentrates his practice in general business and corporate matters, estate planning, and not-for-profit organizations as well. His topic this morning is legal auditing. Please join us up here, Bill.
Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it very much, the chance. And some of you will know that on the website, there was something about in the agenda for this morning, living a fulfilled life and something about living a fulfilled life. And then when it turns out that I'm here, it says legal auditing. So this is not a bait and switch. This is not a bait. There are many, many ways to lead a fulfilled life if you have a good legal audit. So that's not such a stretch at all, okay? But we'll save the other aspects of a fulfilling life for later in the year or maybe into January. I'm going to talk about legal auditing, all right? And I see a few eye rolls, and so, but I want to say first of all that, let's see, I want to pick up right away on what Steve said, that this is September, it's planning, it's looking towards the end of the year, it's a time for review. Where are we going? What are we doing to recalibrate our compass? What are we doing to make sure that we're on track? And so that's where legal auditing fits in. John suggested, don't wait to look at those numbers until the end of the year or till you get that call. Do it earlier in the year and move it upstream, move that whole process upstream. And that's what this is about. That's what legal auditing is about. It's about moving it upstream. And the object here is to prevent surprises, or at least if there are, that they're manageable or predictable. So let me see if we can get this thing to work here. The right, click on the right. The right, all right. Good, okay. It's all about preventing surprises and recalibrating our compass, making sure we're on track. So there are all kinds of ways to do this. Legal auditing, auditors come in and they'll do legal auditing. We do legal audits in terms of due diligence, in terms of acquiring a company or looking over a prospect. So that's all, and there are a number of different methods to do this. You can do the life cycle of the business. You can start with what matters concern the formation of the business, move through what matters concern the running of the business, and move through what matters concern the exit strategies or the termination of the business or the sale of the business. There are specialized audits for example, employment matters or regulatory matters or tax matters or environmental matters or particular areas. And what they all try to do is spot weaknesses, the weakest link, spot areas where there could be a problem. So what I decided to do here is to talk about legal auditing in terms of the way we talk about businesses at E4E, and that is run, grow, and live. And so I looked at those issues that come with running the business, those issues with growing the business, and those issues with living your life, where the business falls into your life, not where your life falls into the business, okay? So the life cycle of the business, as we say here, specific topics, center of the universe, the business is the center of your universe, all the legal considerations that bear on that. We often put draw the cartoon of your businesses at the center, and there are inputs, there is income, and then there is product that goes out, and we draw the diagram that way, and each one of those has legal considerations. So in terms of running your business, let's look at that. What I look for, and this is when, if I, and most lawyers will follow this method, if they review a new client, if they're taking on a new representation, a new business, new client comes and says, I've got this business, I'd like you to handle general corporate matters with the business. Well then, right away, we look at organizational documents. And organizational documents are articles of incorporation, in the registration with the Secretary of State. That document is on the Secretary of State's website. It's a public record. In the LLC world, the LLC has what's called articles of organization. That corresponds to the articles of incorporation in corporate land. The LLC, or the limited liability company, also these articles of organization are also filed with the Secretary of State. So you can go to the Secretary of State's database and you can look up any business, you can do a search of the name and find out the articles of organization. You can find out who the registered agent is. You can find out the registered office for that organization. And many times clients come forward, and I'll ask them for those papers, and either they don't have them handy, they can't find them. I have to go to the Secretary of State's webpage and I find out that the information is totally out of date. They haven't done business at that address for years. Or that registered agent died a number of years ago. Or things are out of date in that way. So that's one thing right away. Got a call from a client yesterday that this client received a notice of a small claims matter brought against the business, and it was a business with which this client had nothing to do as far as the client recalled. Well, I looked it up with the Secretary of State and find out that not only did the client organize the business, but the client was named as the registered agent. Now, I don't know who filed those papers. It doesn't say who filed those papers, but that's the reason the person was served, is because they were the registered agent. Now, once we take a look at the articles of incorporation or the articles of organization with respect to LLCs, I'll ask the client for bylaws or an operating agreement. So bylaws are what go with corporations, operating agreement goes with LLCs. These, and then their EIN, make sure that they have the letter from the IRS that issued the EIN. EIN is the corporate version of the Social Security number. It's the taxpayer identification number. All of these go into what's called maintaining corporate formalities. So if you're going to be a corporation and you're going to claim the benefits of a corporation, you got to act like it. You got to conduct business like it. You can't commingle personal expenses and corporate expenses and treat the corporation as something that is in your back pocket and you can access that money. You have to maintain a distinction between the two, and there have to be transactions and records of transactions back and forth. So things like organizational minutes and annual minutes, appointment of directors, clear lines of authority, minutes of annual meetings. Well, it turns out, we'll go through and we'll find out here's a loan, and they've taken out a $100,000 loan. Well, what we want to do is tie back that loan to specific authority to sign that. So there ought to be a minute entry in minutes of a meeting that say, so-and-so has the authority to negotiate this loan and to bind the corporation as to that loan. Often not such a problem with individual owners, but when you get two or more, then it's a problem. I had a client years ago where they were getting ready to sell the business and they're running up to closing, and one of the owners went out and negotiated a $100,000 loan for the purchase of steel to put up a building across the street without telling anybody. And so they're going to closing on the business, and what is this? Okay. So minutes of annual meetings are a clear roadmap for the critical decisions that are made year by year with the meeting, with the business. And many times in a single owner situation, there may be, the owner reviewed the minutes and reviewed the general affairs of the meeting and concluded that everything is fine, and they sign it, and then it goes on and nothing changes. But you have the record that it's acting like a business, not acting like just the person operating out of a shoebox in their closet. If there are employees in the business, the employment contract, or maybe not. Missouri, remember, is an at-will state. And so we look for withholding compliance and records. Withholding compliance is tricky in a couple of respects. Number one is it can get your directors personally liable. If you don't handle the withholding correctly, you have employees and you don't do withholding correctly, your directors can be personally liable to make that up. And so, that's a real problem. The other thing about tax matters with withholding is that they are almost non-negotiable. And that's because the Department of Revenue takes the position that that's really the employee's money, that's not your money. And so you're taking money from that ought to have gone to them. Leases and licenses, premises leases, equipment leases, software and equipment, contracted services, whether you have marketing temps, and then collection matters. In each one of these, there are documents. And so what I tell people all the time is, have you got them handy? Do you know where they are? Are they digitized? Are they in a directory on a computer someplace? Can you pull them up? Especially if you have licenses or equipment leases. What are the deadlines? What are the renewals? Do you have a 30-day notice period before it automatically renews and you're hooked in for another 3 years? Those kinds of things. You have to be, you need to be on top of those kind of things, again, to eliminate surprises. What? This $15,000 copier, we're in it for another 16 years or another 10 years or what? We didn't do that. We don't need that. Our businesses, you have to look ahead. You have to be aware of those deadlines. They're traps for the unwary. Intellectual property. Remember that any intellectual property you have in terms of created works, copy it and catalog it, and be aware of any registrations that you have, whether it's copyrights, whether it's trademarks. Be aware of those, have those handy, have those documents handy. And then maintenance and fees. 5 years out into a trademark, you'll get a notice. You've got to renew it. You've got to, it's a generous timeline. You have basically 2 years in which to file that renewal, but you've got to show that you're continuing to sell that product substantially in the form in which you registered originally. Let's talk about growing your business. Steve talked somewhat about this. This is capital and leverage. So do you have a business plan? What's your capital structure of the business? Is it just whatever the owner lends it from time to time? Are there other investors? Is there debt financing? Again, there are documents for all of these. If you have more than one owner in the business, then there's another relationship to keep track of. If there's investors, you've got to have an agreement, whether the investment in the business is debt financing or equity financing. Famous case out of Kansas City years ago with a construction company, 2 owners, and they basically didn't communicate with each other except through an office manager, a woman in the office who was, for lack of a better term, a secretary, and she communicated back and forth. Well, they needed to buy a bulldozer, and so they needed a couple $100,000, and in the communication back and forth, there arose a misunderstanding that this was a loan to buy the bulldozer or that it was a capital call to buy the bulldozer and they wouldn't get the money back. Okay, well, that's the stuff lawsuits are made of. Those kinds of misunderstandings. So clear chain of of understanding. Then live your life and not your business. And I just got the 1 minute mark here. So a minute to talk about living your life. So this is all about transitions out of the business plan. Remember, many of you have heard me say this before, there's two models of ultimate direction for business. One is, and your business is gonna end up as a pile of cash somewhere in somebody's pocket, maybe your own, maybe your grandchildren, maybe the government. But you've got a plan for that. So remember that the two models are basically you build a piece of the rock and you sell that. You build something of enduring value and you sell that, and the pile of cash comes to you. The other is you take the money and run, and that is the cash comes off month by month, week by week, year by year, and goes into your pocket. And at the end, you close the doors, you turn out the lights, and there's nothing left. And those are more characteristic of the businesses that exist right here, where it's all, this is all there is. There's not, you don't have a line of bulldozers out there that you can sell. You don't have furniture that you can sell. You don't have any hard goods. It's basically right here. Well, you need to figure out how are we going to take money out to benefit this long suffering family over there that is cheering for your success. So, and then the other considerations, and I ask these of new clients, I talk about the 4 Ds, and I also talk about what's your number. What's your number? You gotta have some feel for a number. So somebody walks in, pulls a checkbook out and says, what do you take for this place? Well, you need to have an answer to that question. You need to have some idea of the value. And that's that because you're not gonna do this forever. And hopefully the value is going to carry on to your family. So the 4 Ds, death, disability, divorce, and departure. Many of you have heard me talk about this. These four, any of these four will send the business down the drain. And yet there are agreements and documents for each one of these things. And so it's a matter of what happens if your partner becomes disabled? Is there a plan for that? What happens if your partner dies? Is there insurance for that? Do you have to buy their stock back? Do you have to buy their LLC equity back? There's an agreement for that. There's a way to do that. Do you finance it by insurance? Do you finance it by some kind of a sinking fund or a reserve? So these are the kind of things that go into an audit of a business. And they're basic, boring things that work for the health of the business and the sustainability of the business, and most importantly, the ability to hand the business off so that you can go on with living your life or whatever you'd like to do afterwards. I'll take questions. I'm well out of time. So if there are questions, I'll be happy to answer those as well. All right. Hearing none, I'll be happy to take a seat. Thank you.